I found evidence of infidelity in her car. I know this sounds like something straight out of a movie, but that's what happened. I'm here sharing this because I can't shake this feeling inside of me. I need to get this off my chest and figure out what to do next. I'm Ryan, 32, and I've been married to Allison for almost 6 years. We've had a pretty standard relationship, I thought. We were comfortable, and I honestly believed she was happy. There were no glaring issues in our marriage, at least, nothing I thought was worth questioning. But I guess I was wrong. It all started last week, right before Christmas. The weather had turned colder, and snow started piling up outside. I was running a few errands for work, and Allison had asked me to drop something off in her car. Her car had been acting up recently, and I promised her I'd take it in for a checkup. So, when I saw her keys on the counter that evening, I figured I'd finally get around to it. I never expected what I would find. At first, everything seemed normal. The car was cold, and I had to scrape the frost off the windshield. But as I was about to open the driver's side door, I saw something that caught my eye, a crumpled receipt wedged between the seat and the armrest. I pulled it out, figuring it was just a random piece of paper she'd forgotten about. But it wasn't a regular receipt. It was for a hotel. A nice one. And not one that I had ever stayed at with her. My stomach flipped. The date was only 2 days ago, and the time on the receipt was around 9 p.m. That wasn't just some casual stay for business. I knew what this meant. She was with someone else. I felt like the world tilted for a moment. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. But my mind was already spiraling. Who was she with? Why didn't she tell me? It wasn't just a fling. This was calculated, planned. I could feel my fists clenching, the anger rising inside me. I spent the next few minutes going through the car, looking for more evidence. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed to find something, anything, that could explain this. I rifled through her glove compartment and found an envelope that seemed to be for a private event she had attended. Inside, there was a receipt for a dinner reservation at a place she and I had talked about going to for months. But she had gone with someone else. A man. I felt this sudden heat in my chest. I wanted to scream, to shout, to punch something. But I had to stay calm. I couldn't let her see how angry I was just yet. No, I needed to confront her, to make her admit it. As I sat in her car, holding the receipts in my hands, I could barely think straight. How long had this been going on? Who was the guy? Why had she lied to me? And worst of all, why didn't I see the signs earlier? I had always been the kind of guy who trusted my wife completely. I never once suspected she could cheat on me. But here I was, with undeniable proof in my hands. I had been living in the dark, and now I was wide awake. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, I got out of the car. I needed to go inside and figure out what to do next. I couldn't just sit with this anger. I needed to do something. I was furious, betrayed, and hurt. When I got inside, Allison was in the kitchen, making dinner like everything was normal. She smiled at me when she saw me, but I didn't return the smile. I felt numb. My heart was pounding. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Everything felt different. "Hey, how's the car?" she asked, stirring something on the stove. Her back was to me, and I could hear the casual tone in her voice, like there was nothing wrong. Like I didn't just find evidence that she had been unfaithful. I wasn't going to play her game anymore. I didn't want to be calm. I didn't want to let this slide. I threw the receipts down on the kitchen counter, right in front of her. "What's this?" I asked, my voice cold. "What's this hotel receipt, Allison? Who were you with 2 nights ago?" Her face went pale as she looked down at the paper. I could see the panic set in, but she tried to cover it up with a nervous laugh. "Ryan, I can explain, she said, but I wasn't going to let her off the hook that easily. No, I interrupted. Don't try to lie to me. I know what this is. I know what you've been doing. Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at me, but it didn't matter. Ryan, please, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't mean for this to happen. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I'm so sorry. I was lonely, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I never meant to hurt you. Alone? I spat out, my anger rising again. You can't just become lonely and get a hotel room with someone else. You can't just start having affairs with someone else and pretend everything is fine. You lied to me, Allison. You've been sleeping around behind my back, and now you're trying to apologize? No. I'm done with this. Her hands were shaking now, and I could see her struggling to find the right words. But it didn't matter anymore. The trust was broken. The love I thought we had was shattered, and I wasn't sure I could ever put it back together. I need to know who he is, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Who the hell is this guy? And don't give me the "it was just a mistake" bullshit. She hesitated, looking like she was about to say something, but then stopped herself. Finally, she looked up at me, her face filled with shame. His name's Eric. We work together, Ryan. I didn't want you to find out like this. But I don't care about your excuses, I cut her off, my voice rising again. I don't care who he is. You've crossed the line, and I'm done. You can't undo what you've done. I'm done being the fool. She collapsed into tears then, begging me for forgiveness, but all I could think about was the betrayal. The anger in me wasn't just from the affair, it was from the lies. The time I had wasted thinking everything was fine, when she had been keeping secrets from me the whole time. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew one thing, I needed to make her feel this. I needed her to regret it. I needed revenge. And I wasn't going to just walk away without making sure she understood the cost of her actions. That night, I lay awake in bed, my mind racing. I kept thinking about what I had discovered, what I was going to do about it. I had been cheated on, lied to, and treated like a fool. I wasn't going to just sit there and let her get away with it. I was going to make her regret every single moment of it. I wasn't sure how yet, but I was going to find a way to make her feel the pain I was feeling. The shock of what I had discovered hadn't fully worn off. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. My mind kept racing, replaying every moment with Allison, the things she said, the things she didn't say, the times I thought we were fine. And now, I was left with the reality that everything I thought was true was a lie. All I wanted was to make her feel the betrayal that I felt. I knew I couldn't just walk away and let it go. The hurt was too deep. I wasn't the type to lash out impulsively, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it either. She needed to understand what she had done to me. I spent the entire night tossing and turning, my mind working overtime. What could I do? What would make her feel the weight of this betrayal? I wasn't going to just confront her and let her apologize again. That would be too easy, too painless for her. No, she had to suffer in a way that would make her regret her actions. I started thinking about revenge. But not the petty kind, the kind that would just give me a fleeting sense of satisfaction. I needed something more calculated, something that would make her feel the consequences of her lies, without me losing control. I called my best friend, Ben, the next morning. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I needed someone to talk to, someone who wasn't emotionally involved. I had always trusted Ben with my life, and if there was anyone who could help me figure this out, it was him. Ben, I said when he picked up the phone, my voice tight with the emotions I was barely able to contain. I need to talk. What happened, man? Ben asked, instantly picking up on my tone. What's going on? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Allison's been cheating on me. She's been sleeping with some guy at work for months. I found evidence last night, and I don't know what to do." There was a long silence on the other end of the line before Ben spoke again. "Holy shit, man. I'm sorry. That's brutal." "I don't know what to do, Ben," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm angry. I want revenge. I want her to feel what I'm feeling. I don't just want to walk away from this. She's destroyed everything. I can't just forgive her. I don't think I even want to." "Okay," Ben said, his voice calm but firm. "Listen. I get it. You're hurting, and you want to make her feel the pain you're feeling. But don't do anything crazy. You need to think this through. Revenge is tricky. It can feel good for a second, but it can also backfire. What exactly are you thinking?" I felt the anger bubbling up again as I began to speak, the ideas coming faster than I could process them. "I want her to regret it. I want her to know that I'm not the guy she can take advantage of. I want to take control of this. She can't just cheat on me and expect me to forget." Okay, Ben interrupted. "But what's the endgame here? What's going to make you feel like you've really gotten what you want out of this? Think about that. It can't just be about making her feel bad, it needs to be something that gives you closure. Something that lets you move on." I stayed silent for a moment, thinking about what he said. It was true. It couldn't just be about hurting her back. I wasn't a vengeful person by nature, but the feeling of being betrayed had overwhelmed me. I was angry, and I wanted her to suffer. But maybe, deep down, what I wanted most was for her to see how much she had hurt me and realize the gravity of her actions. "I want her to understand the cost of what she's done," I said finally. "I want her to know I'm not going to be the guy she walks all over. But at the same time, I don't want to sink to her level. I don't want to destroy her life. I want her to regret it and understand how much she's hurt me, but I don't want to lose myself in the process." "All right," Ben said. "Then let's think of something that's calculated. Something that makes your point but doesn't leave you feeling like shit afterward. I'll help you figure it out." Over the next few days, I started to think more clearly about what Ben had said. Revenge wasn't going to be something that felt good in the long term. If I hurt her just for the sake of hurting her, I'd be no better than she was. I needed to make a point without losing myself in anger. And then, one night, while scrolling through Reddit, because, let's be honest, we all turn to the internet when we need some form of distraction or advice, I stumbled across a post in a relationship subreddit. A user had shared a story about a partner's affair and how they had decided to get back at their partner in a way that made a powerful statement but didn't destroy their own integrity. It was calculated, subtle, and, most importantly, it left the person who had been unfaithful to deal with the consequences of their actions without things spiraling out of control. The more I read, the more I realized this was it. This was the kind of revenge I needed. I didn't need to go overboard, but I needed to send a message. And it had to be done in a way that would make Allison feel the weight of her choices, without me losing my dignity. I spent the next couple of days planning. I started gathering the information I needed to make it happen. But this time, I was doing it right. I wasn't rushing into anything. I wasn't letting my anger take the wheel. I was taking control of my emotions and my actions. I was going to make Allison regret the day she decided to cheat on me. But I was also going to make sure that when it was over, I could walk away knowing I had gotten the last word. And I was going to do it in a way that she would never expect. I spent the next couple of days carefully planning. I had everything mapped out, every detail. I knew that I needed to keep my cool. The last thing I wanted was to get emotional or make a rash decision that I'd regret later. I had to think about this logically, even though my emotions were screaming at me to do something impulsive. Ben had been right. Revenge wasn't just about hurting her. It was about making her feel the consequences of her actions without making myself feel like a monster. I didn't want to degrade myself in the process. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the best kind of revenge wasn't about drama or confrontation, it was about subtlety. I wanted to send a message that would stick with her, something that would make her think twice about betraying me and make her realize that she'd lost someone who truly loved her. After a lot of reflection and a bit of time scouring the internet for ideas, thanks, Reddit, I found the perfect plan. It wasn't about destroying her or even about embarrassing her. It was about making her face the consequences of her choices, about making her realize that I could move on, without her, and be just fine. Here's what I came up with. Step 1, Silent Treatment. The first part of the plan was simple. I needed to disappear emotionally. I wasn't going to confront her again for a while. I wouldn't bring it up in conversations. I wasn't going to react to her tears, apologies, or pleas for forgiveness. She had seen me angry and hurt, but she hadn't seen me just done. The plan was to make her feel ignored, like her actions didn't matter to me anymore. This meant withdrawing completely. I wasn't going to engage in any more discussions with her about the affair. I wasn't going to talk about feelings or reconciliation. I was simply going to act like she was irrelevant to my life. For a while, I stayed silent, avoiding her when she came home, not responding to her attempts to talk. The lack of reaction seemed to drive her crazy. It wasn't loud or explosive, but it worked. Slowly, I saw the frustration building in her eyes. Step 2, Public display of moving on. I knew that for this to really hit home, I needed to show her that I could live without her. That she wasn't the center of my world anymore. So, I took it a step further and started going out. I spent more time with friends, reconnected with people I hadn't seen in a while, and even started casually dating. I wasn't rushing into anything serious, but I went out for drinks, had dinner with friends, and allowed myself to have fun again. At first, I didn't think it would have any real effect on her, but then, I began to see the jealousy in her eyes. I could tell when she was watching me leave the house, her face filled with questions and suspicions. She had never seen me act like this, like I was moving on without her. One evening, I went to a party with a friend of mine, a girl I had known from college. I didn't make it obvious to Ellison, but I made sure she saw me laughing, having fun, and enjoying myself. The moment I walked back in that night, I could feel her eyes burning into me. It wasn't about trying to get her jealous for the sake of it, it was about showing her that I didn't need her to be happy. Step 3, the final straw. But here's where I really wanted to make her feel the full weight of what she'd done. The key to this revenge was to make her face her actions head-on. I decided to take it a step further and make her realize that her betrayal didn't just affect me, it affected her too. I found a picture one she had sent me when we first got together, when everything seemed so perfect. I made a few copies of it and slipped one into a place I knew she would find. Her office. I wasn't going to say anything about it. I wasn't going to confront her directly about the picture. I just knew that if she saw it, she would feel the sting of her own actions. I wanted her to look at that picture and remember a time when we were happy and then realize how far things had fallen. I wanted her to feel that guilt. To remember what we had before she destroyed it. Step 4, the unexpected encounter. The night after I put the picture in her office, I was at home, reading a book, trying to focus on something other than the mess my life had become. It was around 10 p.m. when she walked in. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, and I could tell she was holding something in her hand. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't look up from my book. "We don't have anything to talk about, Ellison." She stood there for a moment, and I could see her struggling to gather her words. I found something. In my office. It's a picture. A picture of us. I don't know how you got it, but I know it was you." I didn't respond right away. I wanted to let her stew in the silence. She had no idea how much more I knew than what she thought. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" I looked up then, meeting her eyes for the first time in what felt like days. "I want you to understand what you've done," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I want you to realize that this is on you. You chose to hurt me. And now, I'm choosing to make you face it." Her expression faltered, and I could see the guilt written all over her face. But I didn't want to see her cry anymore. I didn't want to hear her apologies. I stood up, walked past her, and grabbed my coat. "I'm done," I said softly, more to myself than to her. "I'm done with this. It's over." As I stepped out of the house, the cold air hit me, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I didn't need to see her reaction to know that the message had hit home. She was starting to feel the weight of everything she had done, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the victim. I wasn't the one who had been wronged anymore. I had taken control. What came next wasn't about revenge. It was about me moving on, about me getting back to a place where I didn't need her anymore. Where her betrayal was just a part of my past, and I could finally leave it behind. The following days after my final confrontation with Ellison were quiet, but in a way that felt almost peaceful. I didn't have to deal with her constant apologies or her attempts to fix things that were beyond saving. My emotions were still raw, but the silence, finally, the silence, gave me the space to breathe again. I was no longer a man drowning in a sea of betrayal. I was figuring out what it meant to be me again. Not us. Not we. Just me. I had always been the kind of person who lived for others, always focused on what I could do for the people I loved, sacrificing pieces of myself. But now, for the first time in years, I was learning what it meant to be truly independent. It felt liberating, but it also terrified me a little. The trust one had given her had been shattered, and it was difficult to fathom what kind of life I would be building from here. Still, one thing was clear: I was not going to let her back into my life without facing the consequences of her actions. I wasn't going to forgive her out of pity or guilt. I wasn't going to fall for her tears again. She had made her choice, and I had to make mine. One afternoon, a week after the confrontation, I ran into an old friend while I was out grabbing lunch. Her name was Claire. We had been friends in college, but I hadn't seen her in years. As soon as she saw me, she rushed over with a big smile. "Ryan. I can't believe it's been so long. How have you been?" she asked, her voice warm. I smiled back, a little surprised by the encounter but happy to see her. We sat down, and I quickly caught her up on the highlights of the last few years, though I was careful to leave out the details about Ellison. But Claire, being the perceptive person she was, picked up on my discomfort and hesitation. "Is everything okay, Ryan?" she asked gently. "You don't seem like yourself." I hesitated for a moment. I hadn't planned on talking about it with anyone, not yet, at least. But there was something about the way Claire looked at me, with understanding in her eyes, that made me want to open up. "I've been through a tough time recently," I said, my voice quiet. "Ellison, she cheated on me. And I'm just trying to figure everything out." Her expression shifted to one of shock and sympathy, but she didn't push me further. "I'm so sorry, Ryan," she said softly. "That's terrible. You don't deserve that." I nodded, appreciating her kindness but unsure of how to proceed. "Yeah, well, I thought I had it all figured out, you know. We were doing fine, or at least I thought we were. But then, this." I gestured vaguely, not sure how to express the depth of the hurt I was feeling. "It's just been a lot." Claire leaned in, her tone serious. "I can't even imagine what you're going through. But I know you're a good guy, Ryan. And anyone who treats you like that, anyone who betrays your trust, they don't deserve a second chance. Not when you've done nothing wrong. Her words were like a balm to the wound I had been nursing for so long. Thanks, Claire, I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. I needed to hear that. The next few weeks were a blur. I spent most of my time working, trying to distract myself from the pain that lingered like a shadow over my days. I continued to see Claire here and there. We became closer, and her friendship gave me a sense of stability in a time that felt like it was teetering on the edge. It wasn't anything romantic, at least not yet, but it was clear that there was an easy connection between us, one that had never been there with Ellison. I started doing things for myself, things that made me feel good, things I had neglected for far too long. I started running again, something I had loved before but had given up after Ellison and I got together. I also picked up a few new hobbies, one of which was photography. There was something soothing about capturing the world through a lens, freezing moments in time that felt like they mattered. But still, as I went through my routine, I couldn't help but wonder what Ellison was doing. Had she realized what she had lost? Was she regretting her choices? Part of me wanted to know, but another part of me didn't care. She had made her bed, and now it was time for her to lie in it. It was about a month after our last confrontation when Ellison reached out to me again. She called me late one night, her voice shaky when I picked up the phone. "Ryan. I need to talk," she said. I didn't feel the panic or confusion that I thought I would. I didn't even feel the anger anymore. It was more like I was just done. "I think you've said everything that needs to be said, Ellison." "No," she said quickly. I know I've messed up. But I need you to understand something. I made a huge mistake. I wasn't thinking. I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, Ryan. I made a mistake, and I'm sorry. I just need you to hear me out." I let her talk. I didn't interrupt, but I didn't buy her words anymore. Not after everything. I had spent enough time listening to her excuses. The truth was, the more she spoke, the less I believed in what we had. There was nothing left for me to salvage. "I can't do this anymore, Ellison," I said, my voice steady. "You've hurt me beyond what I can forgive. I'm done. It's over." She cried on the other end of the line, but I didn't feel the need to comfort her. I had already done that for years. It was her turn to deal with the consequences of her actions. "Goodbye, Ellison," I said, my voice cold but clear. "I hope you figure things out, but I won't be part of it anymore." And with that, I hung up the phone. I didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. I wasn't tied to the past anymore. The next chapter of my life was waiting for me, and I was ready to live it on my own terms. I didn't need Ellison or her apologies. I had already moved on. It had been a few weeks since my final conversation with Ellison. I thought I had everything figured out. I was moving on, rediscovering myself, focusing on the things I had neglected for too long. I felt better than I had in months. I even started dating again, not seriously, but just getting back out there. I wasn't in any rush to find someone new, but I was learning how to enjoy my own company. But just when I thought things were settling down, something happened that I wasn't prepared for. It threw everything I had been working on into chaos. One evening, after a day of photography around the city, I returned home to find a letter waiting for me. It was in an envelope with no return address. My first thought was that it might be some sort of bill or junk mail, but as I opened it, I saw that it wasn't either. It was from Ellison. I hadn't heard from her since I'd ended things, and I had no intention of seeing her again. I didn't need more explanations, more apologies, or any more excuses. I had moved on. But as I read the letter, my heart skipped a beat, and all the progress I thought I'd made seemed to unravel in an instant. The letter was brief, but the words stung. "Ryan. I don't know how to say this, but I need you to know the truth about what happened. I made the biggest mistake of my life when I cheated on you, and I know I can't undo it. But there's something you need to know that I couldn't bring myself to tell you before. I've been keeping this secret because I was ashamed, but I can't keep running from it. Please, read this carefully. The reason I cheated, it wasn't just about me being selfish or feeling lonely. There's something else. Something you don't know. Ryan. I'm pregnant. I sat there for a moment, frozen. I thought I had read it wrong. I flipped the letter over, reading the words again, but they were still there, clear as day. Pregnant. The word echoed in my mind, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Pregnant. I thought about the last few months, everything I had learned about her affair, the lies, the betrayal. I had finally gotten to a place where I was okay, where I could let go of the hurt. But now, this? The letter continued. I know you're probably angry, and I deserve that. I'm not asking for your forgiveness or expecting you to come back. But I need you to know the full truth. I thought you deserved to hear it from me, not someone else. I'm so sorry for everything, Ryan. I've ruined everything, and I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know before I make any decisions about what's next. Ellison. The letter fell from my hands, and I sat there in stunned silence. My mind was reeling. I couldn't process it. Pregnant? With Eric's child? How could this even be real? I had known she was capable of lying, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. I felt a sick, hollow emptiness in my chest as I stared at the letter, unable to fully comprehend what I had just read. How could I have been so blind? How could she have kept this secret from me for so long, even after everything had come to light? I didn't know what to feel. Anger, disbelief, sadness, it was all swirling together in a whirlwind of confusion. I spent the rest of the night pacing back and forth, trying to make sense of everything. My thoughts were a blur, but one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let this affect my peace. I had worked too hard to move on. I couldn't let this news drag me back into her web. The next day, I decided I needed answers. I wasn't going to let her leave this hanging, and I sure as hell wasn't going to sit back and let her make decisions about her life, or mine, without confronting her. I called her, my hand shaking as I pressed the number into my phone. It rang a few times before she picked up. Hello? Ellison's voice sounded weary, almost resigned. She must have known this conversation was coming. Ellison, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside of me. We need to talk. Now. She didn't say anything for a moment. I could hear the hesitation in her voice when she finally spoke. Ryan, I didn't want to. I got your letter, I cut her off. And I need to hear it from you. How long? How long have you been hiding this from me? There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her voice cracked, and I could hear the emotion she was trying to hold back. I'm sorry, Ryan. I never meant for any of this to happen. But yes, I'm pregnant. And I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am anymore. I stood there, my hands clenched into fists, trying to keep my emotions in check. This was the ultimate betrayal. Not just the affair, but keeping something this huge from me. A child, her child, with someone else. I don't know what you expect from me, Ellison, I said quietly. But I'm not going to be dragged back into your mess. I've made my decision. I'm done. I'm moving on, and I'm not going to play a part in your choices anymore. I hung up the phone before she could respond. There was no point in hearing more lies, more explanations. The damage had been done. And this time, there was no going back. I knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. The news from Ellison had shaken me, but it wasn't going to stop me from moving forward. I had already started a new life without her, and I wasn't going to let this new bombshell derail everything I had worked so hard to rebuild. I had made my peace, and I was ready to let her go, for good this time. The twist in this story was painful, but it wouldn't define me anymore. It was time to truly move on, and no matter what happened next, I was going to do it on my own terms. The shock of Ellison's revelation hit hard, but it also solidified something I had been subconsciously avoiding. I was done. I had given her too many chances, too much of myself, and it was time for me to take control. I didn't need to stay trapped in the past, drowning in betrayal. I had learned from this, and now it was time to use that lesson to build the life I truly wanted, one that wasn't tied to Ellison or her mistakes. I took the next few weeks to focus on myself. I threw myself into my photography, picking up new projects that reignited my passion. I started running again, reconnecting with my health and my body. I spent more time with friends who truly cared about me and slowly began to let go of the anger I had held onto for so long. What I needed was to rebuild, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And as I started this new chapter, I realized something important. I wasn't just moving on. I was moving up. I wasn't the person I was when I found out about the affair. I was stronger, more self-aware, and more independent than ever before. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. I was free. And that freedom felt better than anything Ellison could ever offer me.